Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. On the Logistics of Logistics, I talk to experts in logistics and transportation, warehousing, fulfillment, supply chain, and of course, technology. And during these interviews, I'm always the one asking the dumb questions. I ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. Today's topic is the state of warehousing and fulfillment with my friend Joe Spisak. Joe is the founder and CEO of Fulfill.com, a marketplace that connects e-commerce brands with the right warehousing and fulfillment partners. There are lots of changes happening in the warehousing and fulfillment space. So if you are a brand or a 3PL and you want to hear the latest trends, please take a listen to my conversation with Joe Spisak. How's it going, Joe?
Hey, Joe. Doing great, man. Thanks a lot for having me on again. It's good to be here.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Joe. Please introduce yourself and your company, where you're calling from today.
Yeah, good to talk to everybody today. My name's Joe Spisak. I am the CEO of Fulfill.com, where we help e-commerce brands find the right warehousing and fulfillment partners. And I am based out of Austin, Texas.
Very nice, very nice. So I know one way to look at your company is you are a matchmaker. You match the brand or the retailer e-commerce company with the right 3PL. Please elaborate on that.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So I've been in e-commerce for a little bit over 10 years. My wife and I started a couple companies in the tabletop board gaming space. We ended up going through 3 different 3PLs over the course of a year and a half, which ended up leading me to starting my own 3PL based out of central Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. I ended up scaling that up to purchasing a 140,000 square foot building, filled that up, and then sold my brands, sold my warehousing company, and started Fulfill.com a couple years ago. So you can see how we took the e-commerce experience, we took the warehousing and logistics experience, and now we basically sit in the middle and play matchmaker. We talk to a little bit over 300 brands per month that come to us to use our fulfillment finder service. We offer this as a free service for brands. And then we have a little bit over 650 3PLs on our network right now, spreading across 2,500 plus locations all across the world. We help brands narrow it down from a couple hundred options to our top 1 to 5 best options, get them in front of those 3PLs, and the 3PLs present their pricing, their solution, and look to see who can start shipping for the brand. So that's how we work and where we came from.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing these days to find exactly the right partners. And I know we all use Google, we're all using ChatGPT and all sorts of other tools like that, but it doesn't lend itself to finding the right partners that way. And we'll get into this in more detail in a minute, but I get a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Joe, I'm trying to grow my warehousing business, my fulfillment business." And they're struggling because what they've done in the past isn't working as well as it once did. And one of the things I know, and we'll talk in more detail about this in a minute, but they used to say, we used to do Google ads, and then the Google ads got really expensive. And I know we had some VC-backed companies that just said, okay, we're going to buy those, and they'll get more and more expensive. And then they were saying, just not working the way it used to. And you're basically trying to find a needle in a haystack. You're calling all these brands and saying, do you need a location in Miami? Because that's where we're at. And they're like, no, we don't. All right, on to the next one. And it's not an efficient way to go get business.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. That is one of the major ways that I filled my warehousing company whenever I was still running that. We were running $30,000 to $50,000 in monthly ad spend on Google alone, getting hundreds and hundreds of opportunities. And at scale like that, we were getting leads for $35 to $40 cost per lead, which is great. Now we're seeing $35 to $40 cost per click on Google Ads for advantageous keywords like California 3PL or e-commerce fulfillment 3PL. When for $40 cost per click, like that's just ridiculous.
I got to tell you, Joe, before I'd done some logistics. I worked at a logistics company. And then when I left that company, I did some digital marketing for a few years. And just around the time I started the podcast, and I realized people wanted to be on my podcast more than they wanted the digital marketing. So after a while, it's like, maybe that is my business. But we did some websites, and I was working with my buddies over at Sun Interactive. They still do a lot of logistics websites. And I remember without even doing any buys, just doing SEO on the website, they end up go, hey, Joe, we got eight RFQs this month. And it was like, yeah, this is easy. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. Those days are long gone.
Yeah, 100%. If you're going to do paid marketing on Google, is definitely much, much harder. If you're going to do it, I'd recommend doing it hyper focused on your brand specifically, or hyper focused on something regionalized that is very specific to your company. Same thing with SEO for your actual brand. Like if your actual 3PL, make it hyper localized to what you guys can do and your geography. So if you have a New Jersey 3PL, do it for best Newark 3PL or best New Jersey 3PL or best East Coast 3PL. Start there for your SEO content and then look to expand outward.
Yep. We'll get back to that in a minute. Joe, tell us a little bit about you. You started to before, but where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started fulfill.com.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm a Central Pennsylvania guy. That's where I grew up, was born and raised.
What is Central Pennsylvania? Is that Philly or is it Pittsburgh or somewhere in between?
It's right in between. So it's 2 hours from Philly, 3 hours from Pittsburgh, and it's right outside of the.
Who do you cheer for?
I'd say I'm more of an Eagles guy, but I'm not like a super big professional sports guy. Even though I was a college athlete, I'm full focus entrepreneur now.
All right, continue.
Yeah, I'm from like right outside of Harrisburg, which is the capital of Pennsylvania. Ended up going to school at the University of Virginia, got my master's degree there, ended up wrestling there for 5 years, which is one of the big reasons I ended up landing there and chose UVA. And then after I graduated from Virginia, I was a network engineer at AT&T. And while I was pursuing my corporate ambitions there, I was working in e-commerce on the side. And that's when I told you earlier, I started some game companies with my wife. And while I was working at AT&T, I was producing and selling board games. And we really struck it big with one of our board games called OK Boomer, which is a family-based trivia game that we ended up doing over $5 million in sales on over the course of several years. And that's really how I got introduced to e-commerce and really learned the ropes there, and kept going down the rabbit hole and realized there were lots of problems in the e-commerce fulfillment and logistics industry that I became interested in solving for my own company. And I realized that there were other people in the board gaming space that are having these problems as well. Started shipping for those folks, and that ended up morphing into starting my 3PL company called ShipDaddy. And then you just keep going down the rabbit hole from there, and sold those companies and started fulfill.com. That's really how I got here today.
Yep. And we talked yesterday when we were talking about this. We talked about one of the challenges with like companies like yours, the gaming company, is you were small and probably doing it out of your garage or your basement or your dining room, and you're dying and you need professional help. But a lot of companies say, no, thanks. We don't need you. They'll say that now. But at one time they said, yes. Yeah, come on in. They said yes to who would be crazy enough to turn down business. That has changed. Now a lot of small players, whether you're manufacturing and you just need a little extra space, or a gaming company, they're being pushed out of a lot of companies because there was a focus more on, we have to serve our niche and we have to have efficiency. And that little onesie twosie gaming company, they're just a thorn in our side. We can't serve them because they're too small. Please elaborate on that, because I just was at a warehousing company here in the Detroit metro area, and I was a friend of mine. I'm going to interview him shortly on the podcast. He said, I go, man, you got all this space. What's going on? Because they're usually transportation stuff. And he said, everyone's asking. So we have space, so we're using it. And I said, why are they asking? He goes, because people are getting kicked out. And by the way, these were large automotive companies that just had, tier ones and tier twos. They got booted out of the warehouse they're in. No room at the end.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because that kind of follows like my exact journey whenever I had my board gaming company. Like I was literally shipping these units out of my parents' garage. And then you start to realize, oh man, I'm spending like 50% of my time packing up all my stuff and driving to USPS and sending them off. And I'm shipping at retail shipping rates when I need to be focusing on creating content and marketing and selling more product, basically. And so what I ended up doing was going the typical route of going to Google and looking for best board game fulfillment companies in Pennsylvania. And I just was getting crushed with ads from big name brand 3PLs. Ended up going through three different 3PLs over the course of a year and a half and just had really not great experience all around. Had really no idea what was good pricing versus bad pricing. Didn't have any idea on what was good industry level shipping SLAs versus what probably wasn't that good. Didn't know anything about communication standards and ended up just pulling the trigger on the person with the flashiest
The
website that was kind of
charisma.
yeah, exactly. That with the account executive that was promising me the world and went with them and maybe lasted like 6 months and was getting charged to ship a board game that's a pound and a half, probably all in, that we were selling for $34.99, $14 to $15 all in, which is like absolutely ridiculous. That should get shipped for maybe $6 for shipping plus $1.50 per order for pick and pack, like $7.50 all in. I'm getting charged more than double that with super crappy shipping SLAs, and I can't get a hold of anybody to try and tell them that I need stuff prepped and shipped into Amazon for FBA.
See, you've been on both sides of this. You've been the warehousing company and you've been the shipper, especially being a small shipper who just feels like you got no leverage. We had no leverage. And it's the difference between making a living and not. So this matchmaking, you get the wrong match, you potentially go out of business or you don't grow. There's a lot of brands now that are looking and saying, we have to grow online. If you stumble on the partnership that you're going to have with the 3PL, you put yourself a year behind. And then you make another bad decision, another year behind. And then at some point, somebody says, e-commerce just isn't for us. This doesn't work. We're not going to sell online. The reason you're not making it work is because you're partners. And again, you guys do this matchmaking every day, multiple times a day. If you're a brand or a warehousing companies do it all the time. But if you're a brand, you do this once a year at most.
Yeah. Yeah, at most. Hopefully, once every couple of years at most. Nobody likes changing a 3PL location, but if you do the math just on my use case there, and we could be saving tens and tens of low hundreds of thousands of dollars as we see the cost per acquisition going up for brands in running Facebook and Instagram ads and just acquiring customers in general. A logical place to look to be able to cut costs so you can spend more money on marketing and customer acquisition is your logistics operation, right? If you don't have someone with great carrier rates, and if you're shipping hundreds, thousands of orders per month and your pick and pack rates aren't really competitive, you should definitely take a look at finding another 3PL. That's just one of the most logical areas to be able to cut costs so you can spend money elsewhere to grow your company.
Yep. When you talk about logistics and transportation cost for over the road stuff, traditional, say if you're a manufacturing company, you're looking at maybe 5 or 10% of your revenue is the logistics costs, transportation costs. 5 or 10%. In automotive, it's when you move over into the e-commerce world, your costs skyrocket. That logistics and transportation cost is now 20, 25%. I'm guessing, that sound about right to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say 20 to 40%.
Yep. So the difference of partners really matters. And Joe, your gaming company, you might still be full-time gaming company guy had you picked the right 3PL the first time, where you said, oh, this is a great business.
Yeah, like you said, it can put you back like a year. And that's exactly what happened to us. We were doing, I'd say 80% of our sales during Q4, the holiday season. If you think about it logically, that's when everybody's playing board games with their family during that Thanksgiving break, during that Christmas break. And that's when we were doing all of our sales. We were switching to a new 3PL during Q4 of one of our holiday seasons where we lost literally over $1 million in sales and opportunity costs because one of our 3PLs just imploded and was weeks and weeks behind on deliveries, and it almost shut down our company. And that was the breaking point for me where I'm like, all right, I'm bringing this back in house. I'm finding out other companies that are having this exact same problem, because I'm looking left and right and I'm watching people just getting absolutely hosed by the people that they're with. And I'm like, this can't be that hard. Like, I've done this before in my parents' garage. Why can't I get more commercial grade technology and start to do this at scale? And serendipitously enough, like, that's when there was a big boom in the commercial grade tech to run a warehouse as well. Like, we were one of Ship Hero's popular WMS company. We were one of their first customers at that time. And we ended up using Ship Hero to become a more commercial grade 3PL, take on more customers. And that's when I started to build and form the 3PL Ship Daddy, and start to push more all in on e-commerce fulfillment.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So, Joe, before we hit record, we were prepping and we came up with 5 things we want to talk about. The first thing is the market overall. I know you used the term COVID was the Super Bowl for warehousing and fulfillment. Please explain that and then where we're at since then.
Yeah, it's funny because I started Ship Daddy like a couple months before this big COVID boom in e-commerce, and had no idea I was in the right place at the right time. And we were like a brand new company. We just put up our website. We had like bare minimum SEO. We were doing some content marketing. We had people like knocking our door down to come and ask us to ship for them. And I was like, man, this is going to be easy. Like, everyone and their mother has an e-commerce company right now. Like, this is fantastic. So whenever I say COVID was the Super Bowl for e-commerce fulfillment, that's what I mean. Like, we had customers actively coming to us, and we had like bare minimum marketing, and we were in a brand new facility, and we were brand new to the industry. So that should tell you a lot about just how popular it was. And
What's the name? Ship Daddy. You got to go with the guy named Ship Daddy.
yeah, maybe that's what it was, the name. Once, I'd say like right after COVID, things really started to cool off, and we saw like a pretty, I'd say, stark decline, or almost like a reckoning of sorts with e-commerce brands, where we started to see a lot of people closing shop, and we started to see this kind of downward trajectory. And now where we're at is things are starting to get a little hot again, and we're starting to see an upwards trajectory. And yeah, we're starting to see things come back up, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I saw not so long ago a list of the top 10 or top 20 e-commerce companies, and a lot of them are way down on sales. And so we were all sitting around, couldn't leave the house, so we bought stuff online. And it was a great time for the business, not for the country or the world. But we're talking about e-commerce companies. Who else are you guys seeing in this space besides the e-commerce companies?
Yeah, so I think, are you talking about in terms of
The brands.
people looking? Oh, got it. During COVID, like, we saw a lot of retailers, people with physical storefronts scrambling to spin up their e-commerce operations and figure out how they could start selling online to keep hitting the numbers that they were hitting in person. Now we're seeing, I think, some of the increased growth that we're seeing in the e-commerce industry is because existing e-commerce brands, people that were able to stick it out through this dry spell of the last couple of years, are starting to become more omni-channel in nature and tack on additional e-commerce marketplaces that they're selling on, right? So during the COVID boom, people were selling on Shopify or BigCommerce or WooCommerce as their staple site. And then they were starting to dabble into these ancillary marketplaces of, hey, we're going to add on an Amazon FBM or FBA. We're going to throw in a Walmart.com and eBay and Etsy. But now we're starting to see the rise in these one-off marketplaces. Maybe people are selling on Fair.com, which is a form of a B2B, or maybe people are starting to push into TikTok Shop and get into live commerce. Or we would do 10 to 20% of our sales in the board gaming industry on, I'm forgetting the name right now, but it was like this one-off Christmas marketplace where we'd sell like an elf.com where people would book their holiday gifts, like something that nobody's ever really heard of. But it plays to the example of these one-off ancillary marketplaces that are becoming more popular because people are buying there, but they're also becoming much easier to plug into a warehouse management system and play directly into someone's back-end fulfillment strategy. So that's why I think we're seeing an increase in e-commerce right now, is because 40% plus of brands are adding on a major ancillary e-commerce marketplace channel year over year now.
Yep. I will also say I bought stuff from Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, but I bought from Instagram. And I will say, I think I'm just use my own example. I think I'm on Instagram more than I'm on Facebook now. I know they're on the same company, but I'm more likely to buy something on Instagram than I am on Facebook. I know TikTok is having a moment with that too. We always have to be aware of how rapidly the world evolves on these social media things. And of course, we're all on LinkedIn too. It's funny. Joe, I said before we hit record, I go, "Oh, you got married since last time we talked." Well, because you posted it on LinkedIn. And I was like, we wouldn't have even posted stuff like that on LinkedIn 5, 7 years ago, but everything's changing on this stuff. And I think to keep up is a little bit of a challenge. But what you're telling me is the back end works.
Yeah, 100%. And back to your Instagram example, that's why Instagram and TikTok especially, they will do these crazy incentivization structures for end consumers like us, where they'll say, "Hey, we'll give you $50 in store credit to buy whatever you want." So you plug in your credit card information, you purchase the first item from there, you realize how easy it is, and then you continue to consume content and then purchase stuff from there. Like, I never thought if you would have told me a couple years ago that I would be purchasing items from TikTok Shop right now, I would have been like, "What are you talking about?" And I buy like quite a bit of stuff from there, whether it's like supplements or protein powder or dad gifts for my wife or something like that. Like I fall prey to a good TikTok ad for sure.
I know this because I am a podcaster. I know this. People are buying from podcasts. People come on my podcast to sell their services. But also, I was listening the other day to Modern Wisdom podcast, Chris Williamson. And he's in Austin, just like you. And he was talking to Tim Ferriss, another Austin resident. And they talk about the supplement brands they sell. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, and they said Huberman uses this. And I was like, oh, Andrew Huberman, another podcaster. And those guys, I think, are influencers that if you were to ask me 5, 7 years ago, do I buy based on influencers? I'd be like, yeah, like who? Kim Kardashian? That was a ridiculous thing to say to me. But I would be likely to buy something recommended by Williamson or Chris Williamson over at Modern Wisdom or Andrew Huberman or Tim Ferriss. All podcasters, all have earned my trust over time. Also authors.
Exactly, man. And the friction to buy from and through these influencers is becoming less and less, right? So now people can post videos on TikTok and literally hit buy this product right there and buy it instantly instead of having to hear something and go to the website. And it's just becoming more and more streamlined.
Yeah, and I think I'm older than you, so I can say this. We were concerned to put our credit card information on the computer at all. Oh, it's all just going to get stolen. And then when the phone came, there was a little more friction where you're like, do I really want to put that on my phone? What if I lose my phone? What if this happens? I think we're all starting to trust that security. Hopefully we're not misplacing that trust there, but it's all leading to e-commerce sales. And not just it's also adding to a lot of B2B sales, but you don't do fulfillment on all of the information systems. Anyway, the next thing we want to talk about beyond the market, which is a little bit of an uptick, is the marketing and the niche. So we started to touch on this at the beginning of the podcast. Companies call me and say, I used to just place some Google ads for my location. I'm in Miami, and now I can't afford them. Become some national companies bidding on Miami, and they don't even have a location in Miami, but they know I got one in Tampa, which it should be the same, good enough, right? So all of a sudden, people are feeling like the Google ads that worked for them really are too expensive, and it's just not working. So what are companies doing, warehousing companies doing that's working in the market right now? What's not working marketing-wise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is one of my specialties in warehousing and fulfillment is the marketing and lead gen portion of it. And I'm seeing a couple different things that are working really well for different 3PLs on our network. So we talk about regionalized SEO already. Referral-based marketing is always fantastic for 3PLs. And referrals can come in a couple of different areas, whether it's from like a matchmaker of sorts, like us at fulfill.com, being able to refer folks into your sales team directly. And this works great because we do the front end qualifying, right? So it's not like running a Google ad, having to get on this initial call with them, qualify the opportunity, decide if they meet your ideal customer profile formula, get on another call with them, present pricing solution, et cetera. We are that first line. So we can eliminate that front end of the sales process, bring them in right to the point where a 3PL is ready to present their pricing, their solution, their contract details, et cetera. Two, referrals from your existing customers, right? So if you can have certain customers that you're already shipping for that are really happy customers, champion your organization and refer business back into you, that's like the best possible lead that you can get as a company. Like you literally have a happy customer walking someone into your lap. They're already so far along in the sales process. And if you can sprinkle in an incentive for the referrer there and say, hey, we'll take 25 cents off of your pick and pack fees for every customer that you can bring to us that we sign. Everybody wins in a scenario like that. And then the last area that I would say that's going to continue to grow that you're very familiar with is content marketing, right? Whether it's creating your own podcast or creating good video content of your warehouse team picking and packing items in your warehouse, or tying this all together in flywheel affecting here, creating content, case studies, testimonials of your happy customers that you can share to social media to attract existing customers and pay your happy customers out on any people that you generate and close from people in those case studies and testimonials. So that's just a couple of things that we're seeing that have been working really well for 3PLs.
Yep. So, if you're looking for a TMS, please consider my friends at Revenova. Revenova is a cloud-based transportation management system built on the Salesforce platform, which means it has a built-in CRM and a higher level of security, reliability, and performance. Revenova is used by many of the top 3PLs, brokers, carriers, and shippers because it has all the features. It's multimodal and it comes with lots of premium features like predictive pricing. If you want to learn more, please visit revenova.com. That's revenova.com, or check the show notes for a link to my interview with Mike Horvath, one of the founders of Revenova. So I know podcasting is working. And one thing that's nice about it is, so fulfill.com, a great company, but people hearing you on my podcast go, oh, I like this. They can learn about you and go, oh, I like that guy. If they get to know and trust you, like it's a sales call, and then they hear you talk about the problems you solve for your customers, like a sales call, and it's not salesy, that works. And we're seeing it more and more. I just talked to, I think I published it last week, the guys from Chris Camacho from Greater Phoenix Economic Council. They've had a big warehousing boom in Phoenix. Wall Street Journal covered it and it was on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube. I called up Greater Phoenix Economic Council. They connected me with the CEO. I interviewed him. Now that I doubt Phoenix went looking for the Wall Street Journal to do that, but they might have. They might have. It happens. And to some extent, it's just telling the story. Say, hey, guys, we have a warehousing boom here. We are now a logistics hub in the desert. We're competing directly with the guys in Inland Empire, and we're 40% cheaper. That's a story. I want to go on a podcast and say something that is oatmeal, vanilla, yesterday's news. That nobody cares about yesterday's news. Nobody cares about yesterday's process, right? What are you going to do for me today that's better than anyone else? And so it can't just be marketing for marketing's sake. You have to do something good first, and then have that story to share.
Yeah, you need to be able to deliver value to the listeners, to the consumer. And that's how you build trust, is by showing that you know your stuff or bringing something new and valuable to the table.
Yep. And then video, we talked about the podcast, but the videos are, we're seeing a kind of a merger of Facebook, I don't know how I say it, YouTube and podcasters. So traditional podcasters like us are now creating tons of video clips and we're sharing them on Instagram and all those other places. And it works. We just talked about how Instagram is getting customers for people. It's also really hard not to look at video. When you see a video on, we'll post some video clips from this on LinkedIn and Facebook, and people will click on them because you go, oh, I know Joe Lynch or I know Joe Spisak. I'm going to click on that. And it's 1 minute. There's so little commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes back to the flywheel effect as well. You can create long form content like this. You can cut that, you can post on YouTube, you can cut that down to YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn video, etc. It's why people focusing on certain areas of marketing will pair different platforms together. Like we focus a lot on our writing marketing, and that's why we pair Twitter and LinkedIn, right? So it's just how
Yeah,
things go.
you should mention YouTube. I just sent an email to Mother Trucker yesterday because I want to get him on the podcast. And I spent a long time with him at Manifest. And it's funny because he's from a different world than I am. He's from YouTube and he doesn't so much do podcasts at all. He does YouTube and he's killing it. And so I said, you got to come on my podcast. But anyway, I watch YouTube more than I watch any other channel, any other TV, more than Netflix or Hulu or anything else. And there are always ads on there now. And so that is brand new business. And we all know now when you say a brand, they pop up on your YouTube feed. Anyway, the third thing we wanted to talk about in going on in warehousing and fulfillment is mergers and acquisitions. Please elaborate, Joe.
Yeah, sure thing. So that's another thing we've been doing a lot at fulfill.com is helping 3PLs either get acquired that are looking to sell and exit the business, or helping 3PLs acquire other 3PLs based off of certain ideal customer profile that they're trying to have for rolling up business under their existing one. Again, like right after the COVID time period, we were seeing some like crazy acquisitions happening all over the industry just because there was a ton of money floating around in the industry from a big COVID boom in shipping for e-commerce brands, but also a big venture capital boom and a lot of money being pumped into e-commerce logistics. And through anecdotes and just through reading online, like we were seeing 3PLs getting acquired for 10 to 20x multiples, which is just insane for our industry. And you fast forward a couple years after those acquisitions, and a lot of those didn't turn out too great for a variety of reasons. And the M&A stopped the last couple years, and except for a few handful of examples. And now we're starting to see things pick back up. I think multiples are back in a more reasonable range of 3 to 5x. Again, there's one-offs of examples outside of that, but that's where we're seeing on average. And it's a little bit easier of a pill to swallow for the people acquiring, and it's still a good exit multiple for people that are selling and looking to get out of the industry. And it just makes a lot of sense if you actually think about 3PLs trying to grow instead of, hey, we're going to sign this lease for 100,000 square feet in California where we're paying an exorbitant amount of rent every month. Then we have to worry about signing an anchor customer and we're basically racing against the clock to try and get business there. What if instead we purchased another 3PL in that area that's already has good cash flow, looking to exit the industry, has our same warehouse management system technology, and the CEO and management is willing to stay on for the next 18 months and guarantee that their revenue is going to stay the same or go up from the point we're acquiring them. That's a really low risk acquisition that leaves plenty of upside for both parties, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of trends that are in play here. We have same day, next day. That is important to a lot of brands. And by the way, I ordered some stuff on Amazon the other day and it's going to get one of the items I bought got there the next day, which is close to expectations these days. The rest is coming next week, which is like, oh, this is like 7 to 10 days on some of these items. I was like, whoa, what's going on there? No big deal. But I did notice, mentioning it now, we all want same day, next day. I would say more likely next day on most stuff, but we have expectations that are very high. Not so long ago, I started asking people, what percentage of warehousing companies have one location? And I've heard over and over again, about 50%. If I have one location, and that one location would have traditionally been in Indiana or near Chicagoland somewhere, and that was 60% of the population lives within one day of there, that's not good enough anymore. So now we're going to want at least 3, 4, 5 locations across the country that allow me to do that same day, next day. There made some sense to say, okay, we're really good in the Northeast. We're really good in the Midwest. We're good in the South. What are we doing out West? What are we doing? How are we going to support Texas and Arizona and those areas? So I think that's probably part of this acquisition strategy. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Take the example of me having like a bigger location in Pennsylvania. We started to hit this kind of like critical threshold where we had bigger customers shipping tens of thousands of orders per month, but to truly push into enterprise, shipping hundreds of thousands, millions of orders a month for some of the top tier brands, they want to see some type of bi-coastal operation or East Coast, Midwest, West Coast location, especially as you start to push into bigger and bulkier items. Like we would do just fine from a shipping carrier standpoint on anything below 5 pounds that we could ship through DHL e-commerce. But once you start to get into the 10, 20, 30, 50 pound range of shipping stuff, you want to be in a zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, or otherwise you start to notice a significant hike in carrier rate fees whenever you're shipping. Yeah, if you only have one location, you're going to start turning down some of the bigger opportunities that you want to sign. And I think the other example of M&A is just strategic elimination of competition in your region, right? Maybe I have a New Jersey 3PL location and I see another New Jersey location that has great marketing, is getting good leads per month, that wants to get out of the game that we could merge with, join forces with, or just outright acquire. So we can eliminate one of our main competitors by purchasing them up and folding their cash flow into what we're doing. So I think that's the two examples we're seeing.
Yeah, and it's not exactly consolidation. There's another trend that's out there, which is these big technology companies, you sometimes VC backed, saying we're going to partner with warehousing companies across the country. They're going to meet our standards and we're going to bring them business. They still run their business. They're still a separate entity, but they are one of our partners. And it's in some ways very similar to what a freight brokerage does, where a freight brokerage says we built a network of carriers. These companies are saying we've built a network of the best warehousing companies across the country. And as soon as one drops the ball or isn't good for a certain product mix, they find somebody else. So there's a number of those companies stored, and I forgot a few of the other names, but I haven't talked to those guys in a minute, but they're all an interesting model. And in a lot of ways, it's consolidation without buying. Please talk about that, Joe.
Yeah, it's consolidation through a technology wrapper that they're overlaying over top of 3PLs and then white labeling those 3PLs and their services and having them ship for them under their corporate umbrella. It's the 4PL model. And we've seen, varied success and failures over the past couple of years with this 4PL model, where once ShipBob a couple of years ago really started, I'd say, pioneering this 4PL model, where they started with a couple main locations that were strictly ShipBob and then started to, their technology is best in class in terms of warehouse management system. And I think they realized that and realized they could grow much more quickly if they would white label 3PLs, have them use their technology, give them customers to ship for under the name of ShipBob, and just keep crushing it from the marketing standpoint, bringing on customers and then pushing it out to their 4PL network. They were able to grow at a really fast clip, but then you start to have quality control issues. And I think one of the reasons you start to have quality control issues is because there is multiple levels of communication that the customer needs to push through in order to get to the source of who is actually shipping my product, right? If you have a 4PL network, think about that. If a customer is trying to get to someone, they're coming emailing through, to ShipBob's main support team. ShipBob's then coming down to the 3PL that's shipping for them, which is them having to go down from that support person to the person that's actually shipping on the warehouse floor. And then it has to run all the way back up through the chain through 3, 4, 5 different people. That is becoming tougher and tougher to do. As what we discussed earlier, we're seeing the market become more omnichannel in nature. People are starting to have more questions. Hey, we need your help onboarding our TikTok shop platform, onboarding our new ebay.com account. The list goes on and on. So the more questions you have, the more time you have to talk to your 3PL, it becomes tougher and tougher to deliver quality control when there's more people stacked into the equation.
It is, we all want flat org charts, and that one's almost by nature a little more of a challenge, but I think it can work. It reminds me always when somebody sees explosive growth that way, your first thought should be, is it actually, can you actually execute what you're saying you can execute? Because the operations, it's not an easy business. And can I get the exact same service across the country? Because that's what we're looking for. We want the standard excellent service. And we take it for granted. I don't go there a lot, but McDonald's, they nail it. A lot of Chipotle, these companies are all killing it on a national basis. Somehow they get it done, but they don't have that extra layer either. Anyway,
Yeah,
enough of my
exactly.
blather. The next thing I want to talk to you about is communication and customer experience. I think the bar has gone higher. Please elaborate.
Yeah, it's what we were just talking about. We're starting to see customers realize that there are better and better options out there in terms of 3PLs. And I talk about three main pillars whenever brands are coming to us and looking for a new 3PL that are important to them. Number one is pricing, right? Pick and pack fees, carrier rate fees. Number two is shipping SLAs, things like whenever my customer places an order, that order needs to be shipped out within 24 business hours of being placed. Maybe receiving SLAs. Hey, whenever we ship inventory into you, everything needs to be hand counted, stocked, and input into the warehouse management system within 2 to 5 business days. And then three, communicate. Really, whenever I first started in the e-commerce fulfillment industry, I'd say the industry standard of communication was the direct-to-consumer customer that was shipping with the 3PL would email the 3PL, and the 3PL was expected to respond within 72 business hours. That's just not cutting it anymore. So one of the things that we did at ShipDaddy in the name of our flexible fulfillment model was every single brand that we ship for is going to have a real-time communication channel via Slack where they can talk to the people actually on the floor picking and packing their items in real time, and we'll get back to you within a couple hours and get you an answer on whatever you need to get to. It's a much harder model to scale from a 3PL perspective. We tell brands that the best 3PLs that you should be looking to ship with can act as a true extension of your business, right? It should feel like it is your 3PL or just a shipping department at your company that you can reach out to, and someone on the floor is going to get back to you and help you with your problems in pretty close to real time. And I think some of the bigger guys that haven't had this or have stuck to that email 72-hour industry standard have started to see a lot of churn with brands in their organization. And this is becoming one of the main pain points for brands coming to us is, hey, we'll even pay a little bit more money. We just need to be able to talk to someone. And we don't want to talk to them every day. We just want to know that's an option that we can either pick up the phone and talk to the people on the floor, or we can punch something out in the keyboard and we know someone's going to get back to us consistently within a couple hours.
The customer experience, once you see it one place, there's an expectation you're getting it everywhere. Everything seems to just upgrade now. Wherever you go, whatever you're doing, the customer experience is, we didn't even used to use the term customer experience. Now you see every brand out there talking about it. And customer experience is going to keep your customers happy. There's all sorts of, you hear how many companies use the term customer success, our customer success team, our customer experience team. That is a relatively new, we've always wanted our customers to be successful, but to have a team and to start putting metrics around it, that's different and better. And the customers are now expecting it.
100%.
That's going to be a lot of communication, but it has to be the kind of communication that they want and not there's the right stuff here, and the best brands are figuring out what that is. Or I'm sorry, the best warehousing companies are figuring out what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Because it comes back to the point what I was saying earlier. Like, no brand wants to have to be talking to their 3PL every day. That's definitely not the goal. No 3PL certainly wants to be talking to brands every day. But you want to have that option available that you can talk to them if something's happening, or maybe most common use case is you're growing, you're adding another sales channel, you're adding in B2B fulfillment, you're adding in retail fulfillment with EDI requirements. These are all pretty complex things that require a good amount of back and forth between brand and 3PL. And to have to do 20 back and forth with a 3-day delay via email is like absolute nightmare, right?
So the last point I want to talk to you about, Joe, is your advice to brands, or these are basically the shippers who are looking for warehousing and fulfillment companies, because there are a lot more choices. There's really good companies out there, a lot of great companies out there, but it's not easy to pick them. And again, you can go on Google and start Googling best warehousing companies, and they're all going to pop up because everybody did their SEO to be on that page one Google, but it's not necessarily going to get you right company for you, because there's a fit. And the best warehousing company in the world, best fulfillment company in the world, if they specialize in something that you don't do, it's not a good fit. So what advice would you give to brands that are looking to make a move, looking to hire a new warehousing and fulfillment partner?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head right there. And everything that we've talked about throughout this segment kind of points to the same thing. Like, 3PLs are having to compete harder and are having to up their game right now to get more e-commerce brands to ship for. Competition's higher, meaning you can get better rates, better service, better communication with a 3PL out there. So if I were a brand owner right now and I was looking to cut costs and give a better shipping experience right now, I would take a look at my own logistics operation, my existing 3PL operation, and see if this may be a good time to either find a new 3PL or negotiate with my existing 3PL, but before primetime holiday season's coming up, to try and get better service level, better communication, or most notably, probably better rates. I'm biased, and this is where I'll plug fulfill.com, but the best way to do that is through our company. We offer this as a free service through fulfill.com, where we will work directly with the brands, gather up their information, compare this information against our network of 2,500 plus 3PL locations, and help show you quantitatively whether or not you are getting good pricing, whether your shipping SLAs are good and meeting industry standard, whether your communication levels are good and up to speed with what you should be expecting from your partner. Long story short, take a look at your existing operation and see if it may be a time to find a better one or negotiate with your existing operation to get better pricing and services.
Yeah, you guys are experts at it. Companies don't do it every year. Hopefully, they're not doing it every year. They do it every 5 years, and they might not even know the right questions to ask at this 1 minute, because the world is always moving. And so, if I said, "Oh, I've never hired a 3PL, or I haven't hired one since we incorporated this 10 years ago, and we need to upgrade," you guys know the right questions, the right fit. Anyway, I'm going to summarize, and I want to get your final thoughts on the topic, Joe. So I'm talking to my friend Joe Spisak. We're talking about the state of warehousing and fulfillment. So we covered 5 points here, Joe. We talked about the market, which has, during COVID, it was an explosive market. Everyone was buying online. Cooled off a little bit after COVID. I would also say the interest rates going up didn't help. Us being able to leave the house didn't help. But anyway, you're starting to see a little more of an uptick in activity. Thank God. Next, we talked about marketing and how what used to work in the market isn't working as well as it used to. We didn't, we touched a little bit, but I think the importance of having a niche. If you're a company, no marketing is going to get you more bang for your buck than having a specialization. Number three, we talked about the consolidation. We're seeing a lot of mid-market and enterprise companies make acquisitions, either to take away some competition or maybe to expand their service offerings so they're truly a national warehousing company. last but not least, or no, second from last, we talked about communication and the customer experience. Bar has gone up. Customers expect more. And by the way, the end customer is expecting more, which means the brands and the e-commerce companies absolutely are expecting more from the warehousing companies. And your last advice to brands was, hey, if you got to make that, you want to do it before the busy season, obviously. And it doesn't hurt to get a partner like fulfill.com who can help you make the right pick. This is a critical pick. You can make the wrong decision and spend a lot of time and money picking the wrong partner, and you're going to be very sorry a year or two from now. So, final thoughts on the topic, Joe Spisak?
No, man, that's really everything. That was a great summary. As always, I appreciate you having me here. If anybody wants to talk, feel free to reach out to me at joe@fulfill.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. And my Twitter is @JoeSpeezy. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to talk shop, e-commerce logistics. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Thanks again for having me, Joe.
Yeah, it's my pleasure always. And by the way, I was on LinkedIn last night and I noticed you post on a regular basis. Here's a brand that's looking. Any 3PL is interested. So you have a lot of brands coming to you every month. So give us your 2 bullet points. What's the advantage of brands working with you, and what's the advantage of warehousing companies working with you?
Yeah, so we have a little over 300 brands coming to us a month right now. And the advantage for brands is that we're a free service. We help brands out on that side of the house for free. And instead of trying to line up 3PL call after 3PL call and talking to 10, 20, 30 3PLs yourself, we compare hundreds and hundreds of 3PLs at scale and narrow that down to our best 5 options that you should be talking. We do this every day. We talk to hundreds of 3PLs. We offer this as a free service for brands. For brands, it's a no-brainer, right? Whether you're just looking to find a 3PL or whether you're looking to do an analysis on your existing 3PL to see whether or not your rates and your shipping SLAs and your communication are great. That's the advantage we bring to brands. And for 3PLs, we offer, this is a great way to acquire customers that are in your ideal customer profile. We're cut the first part of the sales process away, where that initial intro qualification call, and we can feed your sales team really qualified opportunities and cut out a lot of the BS, as well as reducing your cost per acquisition, cost for customers. Like we talked about earlier, spending hundreds, thousands of dollars on running Google ads. This is just a much more efficient, effective, and cost-effective way to acquire customers for your 3PL that are actually going to stay, that you're going to be able to retain.
Yep, you're the matchmaker. I love it. I love it. So, Joe, what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from fulfill.com at?
Yeah, so we hit Modex this year, my business partner Dan and I, in Atlanta. Next year it's in Chicago, so we're going to be doing that for sure. It's still open right now for us.
Well, it is summertime, so we don't have to go to conferences for a while.
Yeah. We will be making trips out to several of our 3PLs. Like, we are going to visit a couple of our 3PL partners in Chicago here pretty soon. And we're flying out to different cities to check out the operations of 3PLs on our network for sure. But yeah, I'll keep you posted on some of the conference stuff. But yeah.
You're big on LinkedIn. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and any other links you and your marketing team give me. I'll put those in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Joe.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.